February 4th, the year of our Lord 2026. It is 12:01 p.m. in Washington, D.C., which is to say 7 o'clock p.m. in Kharkiv. And I know it's going to be only about 30 seconds before somebody complains about the background noise and the fact that there is music here. And I got to tell you, folks, I am totally not giving a shit about that. And here's the reason, because yesterday I went to a nice quiet place in my bunker hotel with the no windows, and the internet was just not adequate to actually do a full show. I got booted off a few times. And so this time I decided we're going somewhere with nice, stable internet that's going to support the show, and we're going to just run with the background noise that shows up. And it's going to be a restaurant. I'm going to order a scotch. I haven't had a scotch with the show since we started doing it at 8 in the morning, because, you know, it was one thing when it was when the show was at 5 o'clock p.m. and it was Kate Klonick and I would get together for a drink every night with our friends. You know, that was one thing. You could have a scotch then, but scotch at 8 in the morning is not really a thing. It's 7 o'clock in the evening here. This is a pre-dinner drink. And so I'm just saying, if you don't like the background noise, fuck off. I don't want to hear about it. Look, folks, I just spent the day touring just an unbelievable array of Kharkiv war geography. And I'm going to be doing a photo essay on that over the next 24 hours. I actually think my talking about it now is probably not going to be that helpful, because it is so visual that the photographs, I could probably talk about it for hours and not convey what I can convey by sharing probably 50, 60 pictures that I took. So I'm going to not talk about that a whole lot today, except to note that expect it coming in your emails as soon as I get my act together and actually upload it. Look, the sun was shining in Kharkiv today. The birds were chirping, and there are these giant ravens here that when they chirp, you really hear them. And it was a great fucking day, other than it being negative 20 degrees Celsius most of the day. And you are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a goddamn revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, of which there are many, is that, you know, sometimes it's at 7 p.m. Kharkiv time, and I make no apologies for that. And sometimes the morning revolution in morning television is not in the morning. Another one of the revolutionary features, of which there are many, is that sometimes, you know, we have guests often. We don't usually have them sitting next to us on the same camera, talking into the same mic. But I figured, first of all, we happen to be together, so why not do it this way? But secondly, that way we only need one internet connection, and we don't have to. So we're not going to be muting ourselves when we're not talking. You're going to get this background noise the whole time. If you complain about it, I don't care. And my scotch has arrived, so I'm reaching across the camera to grab my scotch, and all of which is a long-winded way of saying that we're not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to really learn a lot about Kharkiv and the war from an incredible group of people who took me on this tour, one of whom is sitting next to me. And so let me introduce Jimmy Rushton to you. First of all, if you guys are not following Jimmy on Twitter if you still use Twitter. Um, you're on Blue Sky as well,
I'm
right?
on Blue Sky. I'm on Substack as well. I mainly use Twitter simply because, despite the fact that Elon Musk is a terrible, terrible person, all of the years of contacts that I have are still there. So
Right.
that's why I use Twitter.
Look,
He's a terrible person, but if I can use it to get the word out about Ukraine and the reporting that I do, I have to, swallow that bitter pill.
no,
Unfortunately.
I paid a huge price for getting off Twitter, and I'm not sorry I paid it. I paid it willingly, knowingly, and intentionally. But it dramatically impairs my communication with a group of people. For example, yesterday, and some of you may remember him. Back in the early days of the full-scale invasion, there was one voice who knew the Russian military better than everybody else combined, and it was a former Marine named Rob Lee, who just studied the Russian military. I believe he was writing a dissertation on it, and he did these incredible Twitter threads of just information about the Russian military. And Rob was, we did a couple podcasts together. We were, acquainted, except in the sense of we'd never met or anything, but we'd spoken, and and yesterday it turned out that he's now living and working in Kyiv, and happened to be in Kharkiv, and we had drinks with him with a number of other with people associated with the Kyiv Independent, and I had completely lost touch with him, and the reason that I had completely lost touch with him is that I'm not on Twitter anymore, and that was the means by which we were in touch. And there's probably a few hundred people like that, and so yeah, you do pay a price when you get off Twitter. And again, I'm not sorry I did it, but I do regret the loss of a lot of valuable contacts and people that have important things to say and who I would like to talk to. So Jimmy, so let me say a few words about who Jimmy is in relation to a couple of things, including my travels here. But then I actually want you to introduce yourself and describe the work that you do. So Jimmy is a freelance journalist, as you can tell from his accent. He's British. He's a freelance journalist who has been doing work here since 2022. He lives in Kyiv, and he has been, I'm not sure, he's been sort of my guide to a bunch of things. One is a series of introductions to a certain set of elite military groupings on the Ukrainian side. The other is that he is he's sort of organized my agenda and travels on this Kharkiv leg of the trip. And the third thing, which I would be remiss if I did not mention, is that he has been a key participant in Project Batteries. So everybody who has been contributing to the battery project, there is this leg of the thing, which is getting batteries from the battery distributors to the people who need them. That is actually a tricky business because the streets are really treacherous. People mostly don't have trucks. And so Jimmy has put his pickup truck available to Nastya and has been doing a whole lot of evening deliveries to neighborhoods of Kyiv that most of us don't know how to navigate through. And doing it, by the way, whenever there's an air raid situation, the GPS goes out. And so, these are actually trips that require knowing neighborhoods and knowing how to navigate between Soviet apartment blocks that all look remarkably similar. So to everybody who is invested financially or emotionally in this project, we all owe Jimmy a debt. So that is my introduction, which is admittedly through a particular set of lenses. But Jimmy, tell us a little bit about the work that you have been doing here, how you came to be in Ukraine, and what's the Jimmy Rushton story?
The Jimmy Rushton story is long and boring, but I'll skip to the interesting part. I moved to Kyiv in May 2022, and I started writing about the war, primarily for Yahoo News at the time, and I was working quite a lot with an American writer called Michael Weiss. I'm also a security analyst, and I do consulting and analysis for private clients, including think tanks, NGOs, etc. And I've really, been doing that since May 2022. I've been lucky enough that I built up a really concrete network of contacts here, including with some of the best military units in Ukraine, so Azov, Hatia, Third Army Corps, and I know Ben is a good guy, and I know he's a good friend of Ukraine, and someone that I can trust to introduce to people like this. So I offered my services when Nastya, who's is obviously Ben's colleague and my friend.
The audience knows Nastya very well because she's a frequent co-host.
Okay, so Nastya, when we were delivering some of these batteries, told me that Ben was coming to Ukraine and suggested that they wanted to go to Kherson, and I told her that that was stupid and that if they went they'd both die, which was an exaggeration, but not too much of an exaggeration because Kherson is stupidly dangerous. It's prime drone territory and people are killed and injured there all the time. So I offered to arrange something slightly less adventurous, so to speak, for Ben on his first trip to Ukraine. So we came to Kharkiv. I introduced him to Hatia, Kraken, and some other people. And I'm a Kharkiv evangelist. I love Kharkiv. I think it's a great city, and I wanted to show him around. I know the city very, very well, which is also good because GPS doesn't work here at all, 90% of the time.
Okay.
So you have to know where you're going, you have to know where you're staying. It's also relatively, it's more dangerous than Kyiv because it's close to the border. You have less warning when there's an air raid. Russian missiles can arrive in minutes rather than, well, it depends on the type, but they arrive a lot quicker than they do in Kyiv, so you don't really have time to get to shelter. So I made sure that Ben was in a nice windowless cave in a hotel in Kharkiv, and he's had a wonderful time, I think. So no complaints, at least not public complaints far.
No, first of all, I have no complaints, and by the way, if you're ever lucky enough to come here, and first of all, do it with appropriate adult supervision, because there are a lot of stupid mistakes that you can make without even having any awareness that you're making mistakes. One of them is, just you could go out for a walk and not know that you can't use Google Maps to get yourself back, that you actually have to pay attention to street navigation in a way that we haven't had to do since MapQuest showed its face in the world 20 years ago or whenever it was. Another one is the temptation to book a nice hotel with a view, which is to say a nice bank of windows high up in the building, is a very natural thing to want to do and really actually does change your risk profile. And so, there is, there's a list of things that you I guess Don Rumsfeld would call them the unknown unknowns. And, the unknown unknowns in a place like this are not trivial, and you want to be very respectful of them. And I'm very grateful that I have had somebody to help me uh, make some of the unknown unknowns known unknowns, or even known knowns. And that is Jimmy, and it's been really a real godsend. Before I forget to ask, where can people find you on Substack and Twitter?
So on Twitter, I am Jimmy Rushton, and my username is Jimmy Sec UK. And on Substack, I am Notes from Kiev. I don't update my Substack as much as I should do, but I generally write for a range of other publications as well. Kiev Independent.
Yeah, so where do you mostly write for?
Currently, I'm writing in the Kiev Independent. I've done some work for Offbeat Research, New Lines. I've written for the Telegraph and Yahoo News in the past as well. But everything I publish, I upload on my Twitter and generally on my Substack as well, so you can read it there.
All right. So when people hear somebody say, I'm a freelance writer, I do some analysis, I do some work for private clients, they always have the same question, which is, are you a spy? And so my question, let's just get this out on the table. Which intelligence services do you have a relationship with?
I don't have a professional relationship with any intelligence service, let's put it like that.
Okay.
As any good journalist does that covers war, conflicts, you always attempt to cultivate sources within intelligence agencies. That's just natural. And I have sources in multiple intelligence agencies and former intelligence agencies, and they're always very, very useful.
I meet with people from intelligence agencies all the time. Yep. And meeting with people from intelligence agencies does not make you a spy. It makes you a think tanky person,
or a journalist,
or a journalist, or a the intelligence community plays a legitimate role in all sorts of things, and I think it's I have that's a different thing. All right, so let's talk about how you came to be intimate enough with this area to, drive around it without the need of GPS, to be comfortable, to have a comfortable set of instincts about what you can and can't do safely, to know the sort of people who could put on a tour like the one that I got today, which, again, bracket this, you guys will see the fruits of in, it may take me 48 hours to put together this photo essay because it's that dense and rich. But, how did you come to be you in over the last 4 years of this conflict?
So, generally, as a journalist, you or an analyst, you build relationships slowly. You have meetings with people. Essentially, it's about gaining trust. And what I find in Ukraine is that, especially as a foreigner, people aren't going to trust you straight away. There's lots of foreigners that have come to Ukraine, journalists and others, who are only looking to get something out of it for themselves. They're not looking to represent or tell the story of what's happening here accurately. They're looking for sensationalism. They're looking for clickbait and very superficial, not even news really, just kind of content, social media content. But once you prove that you're not here for the wrong reasons, once you prove that you're a reliable person they can speak to, because obviously people cultivate relationships with journalists and analysts because they understand that you're useful to them, right? So someone who befriends a journalist or builds that relationship with a journalist does so because sometimes there's information they want to get into the public sphere. But they do that, they have to know that they can trust you. in order to supply you with that information. So it's a slow process. It's also it's like any relationship, really. You become friends with people, you become close to sources, you spend time together, and slowly, you start having these genuine relationships with sources and friends and contacts, and you then can what's the right word? Introduce them to people like Ben, who I can vouch for, because I wouldn't do it just for anyone. I'd only do it for someone that I believe is here for the right reasons as well. And I don't think there's any doubt that you are, because, I mean, Nastya vouched for you, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, so how did you get interested? And it's one thing to be interested in Ukraine journalistically. It's another thing to pick up and move here in the early days of the war, that it is not at all clear that the country is going to survive. And in May of 2022, that was past the worst days, but it was not 100% obvious that Ukraine was going to survive as a state. And talk to me about how you decided to show up here. You weren't a Ukrainian speaker. You didn't have a historical tie to the country, either journalistically or ethnographically or culturally. It's a big step. What was the 2022 Jimmy Rushton psychology that said, "Oh, I'm going to run toward that fire"?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I've thought about it myself. The funny thing is, I didn't actually intend to stay, so I came over, and I thought I was going to stay for a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and I just stayed longer and longer and longer, and then I realised, well, considering the work that I'm doing, why don't I just stay here permanently? And then I became more and more immersed in the culture. You build relationships here, you build friendships, you build connections with the country, and then you start having an emotional investment in what happens to Ukraine. And obviously, as a journalist and an analyst, I don't want to colour my work with emotion, so I don't think that's helpful. It depends, obviously, what I'm writing. If I'm writing a piece that's about an emotional subject, obviously you can use emotive language. But if I'm writing a strictly analytical piece, I want to be honest, because I think one of the big failings of a lot of analysis is it's written with a very specific bent, and it's written like a lot of the problems that Russia has had is that bad information doesn't get passed up the chain, and people are punished for being honest and reporting bad news. And for example, in a recent interview I did with the ex-commander, ex-chief of staff of Azov, Bogdan Kotovich, we covered the manpower shortages in the Ukrainian military. We covered command deficiencies in the Ukrainian military. And that was a relatively hard-hitting interview, and it covered some really difficult topics for the Ukrainian side. But it was all true, and I think, from my perspective, the work that I do hopefully has contributed to helping people to understand this conflict better. Some of the work that I have done in the past has had an impact on Western policy towards Ukraine. It's impacted arms deliveries to Ukraine. For example, when I was working for Yahoo News, we revealed, me and my co-writer Michael Weiss at the time, we revealed internal US Air Force documents showing that the Biden administration had been lying about how long it would take to train Ukrainian pilots on F-16s. They had been saying consistently it would take around 18 months, and we leaked an internal US Air Force document that was a training assessment that was carried out on Ukrainian aviators at Tucson Air Force Base, Arizona, and it showed that this internal assessment appraised that it would take 4 months to train Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16 rather than the 18 months that the administration was saying. And a few days later, the F-16 was approved by the administration for transfer to Ukraine. The New York Times said that the reporting that we had done in that case had directly influenced the administration because it took away one of the key objections that they had historically for not providing F-16s to Ukraine, that it would take too long to train and that they wouldn't arrive in time to do any good. So I think, hopefully my work has had an impact. It's obviously always difficult to, unless you have a kind of an assessment from a third party like we did in that case, it's always difficult to know. But I don't know, hopefully. Sometimes I feel like I'm screaming into the void, but I think all journalists feel that at some point.
Yeah. So tell me about your prior background. What did you pick up and leave when you came to Ukraine? Who were you before this?
I was doing similar things, but for a private client. So I was doing analysis for a range of organisations, similar to what I'm doing now, but just for private consumption. And I got a little bit frustrated with writing exclusively for institutions that would just use it to make more money rather than doing anything that actually was, that made any change in the world. And I think I'm kind of old-fashioned when it comes to journalism. I genuinely think that journalism, if done properly and if done ethically, can make the world a better place. So I think it's very important, and I think that, coming today, the Washington Post just closed their Ukraine bureau, which is, a staggeringly stupid decision. I think people need to understand more of what's happening in Ukraine, not less. That's the way I view my role here.
All right, so I want to come back to this question of the relationship between journalism and involvement in the issues, which you and I have spent some time talking about over the last few days. But before we do, we have a question from Nicholas. What is, in your opinion, the best sources of daily news? He asks specifically about podcasts, but what are the set of things that you think we should all be reading, listening to, watching, or otherwise consuming in this space? Hello, Avochka.
Hi. I can't see either of you because my phone is vertical, but that's okay. How are you guys?
That's okay. What we're going to do is I'm going to turn on speaker view here so that way you'll be able to see us and we'll be able to see both of you. So here's the way we're going to, here's the way we're going to do this.
So in my Substack community chat, someone texted that they're listening to you guys, and that's how I knew that this was live.
Well, there you go. It's all right. So Jimmy, what's the ideal media diet for somebody who is serious about following Ukraine news?
That's a very good question. I don't actually have a good answer to that because I consume almost everything. I know that's a terrible answer. There isn't one concise briefing that you can just read that will give you everything. You need to read Ukrainian news, you need to read foreign news, you need to read a bunch of Telegram accounts. To be honest, probably, and I'm not saying you should believe what you read on Russian Telegram accounts, but it's useful to see what they're saying, because sometimes, especially the Russian military bloggers, they are more truthful than you might expect. For example, there's a relatively infamous Russian military blogger known as Fighter Bomber. He's affiliated with the Russian Air Force. But every time a Russian Air Force aircraft gets shot down, he acknowledges it. with, and it's a famous line that he comes out with, "Eternal flight, brothers," and that's become something of a meme on Ukrainian Telegram now. Say the line on Ukrainian Twitter now, that whenever a Russian Air Force jet gets shot down, they joke that it's only confirmed when Fighter Bomber does the say the line joke. But it's you need to consume a lot. I would say the Kyiv Independent is very good. I read the Ukrainska Pravda in Ukrainian. You can use Google Translate on it, which is fantastic. I would say read quality foreign news. The FT, The Economist, Wall Street Journal do very good Ukraine stuff. So I would say you need a balance of Ukrainian and Western sources, because you don't really get a full picture from either. Also, there's a bunch of influential Ukrainians that I follow, so Bogdan Klotovich, Sternenko, and various Ukrainian military bloggers who will give you a really good understanding of what's happening in the war, and it's very unfiltered as well. That's one of the great things about you following these guys, is they will tell you absolutely, they aren't going to sugarcoat the reality at all.
And on the specific question about podcasts, the Telegraph has a podcast, a daily Ukraine podcast that's quite substantial. What are the good podcasts devoted to this subject?
I don't really do podcasts. I don't really listen to them. I know I just don't have the time. I find personally, and this is just from my personal perspective, because the amount of content that I consume, I have to read, and for me it's very inefficient to consume and to get information via listening to it. I just have to read it. The Telegraph podcast is okay. It very much depends on who's speaking, to be honest. They have some excellent speakers, and they have some people that really shouldn't be on there, that have never been to Ukraine and really don't know what they're talking about. So it's very much dependent on who's speaking. I mean, the regular journalists on there, like Joe Barnes is a great friend of mine. He's brilliant. He's very good. We went to Kherson together, in fact. Dominic is great. Francis is great. Those guys are all good. But even then, it's from London. It's not coming from Ukraine. And Ukrainian media is almost always ahead of them. So yeah, I think you need to. It's not an easy answer. I think you need to be to understand what's happening here. You need to read a lot, and you need to read a bunch of different sources, because you won't get the complete picture unless you do. Is
there a good aggregator?
No.
That is, guys, if you want a business, a good, high-quality Ukraine aggregator, there's a hole in the market for it, people. Just saying, I'm not going to do it because I don't have time. I run Lawfare and I do this. But, the fact that the answer to that question took as long as Jimmy just took to answer it is not a reflection on Jimmy's verbosity.
It probably is, to be fair.
But it's not, it is principally a reflection of the fact that there's no place that you can say this is the thing that you need to be following every day. And that's that's what we call in the business a hole in the market. So, if you want to, and you have to be a really good curator, because you have to know that, you have to know who's reliable and who's not. The curation job is actually a real project.
Maybe I should do that on my Substack.
Maybe you should do that on your Substack, Nastya. But it's really something that actually somebody should spend the time and energy to do. And I think for precisely the reason that Jimmy is describing, which is that it takes a huge amount of time and effort and reading to be up on the news in a way that is more than dilettantish. And I just want to say my engagement is dilettantish, right? So I don't mean dilettantish as a criticism here, as long as you know you're being dilettantish and you know what you don't know. But there really is a space for somebody to be aggregator. Makes it sound like you're being Matt Drudge and you're just like linking to stuff with but like being a curator, there is real value to that. Nastya, what have you guys been up to while we've been on this trip?
Thinking about how would rather be on the trip with you.
She's been sending me tasks. That's what she's been doing. She's been sending me
Yes.
shopping tasks.
Yeah, that's true.
I have. I have.
Okay, so
yes.
so brief detour on.
I've just been telling
Nastya's-
Jimmy where he has to go and where he has to take you, and yeah.
Well, so Nastya has been actually guiding a lot of shopping recently. So the other day, she took me to a series of Kiev brand stores and ordered me to buy lots of things. And so this
We
is the
spent a
first
lot of
trip-
money. It was
This
fabulous.
is the first trip in my life that this has ever happened. I am going to have to acquire a suitcase to get the stuff home that I bought. I am somebody who travels super light, as Nastya will verify. I showed up in Kiev with a single carry-on and a tote bag that carries some electronic equipment.
I
And
told
that's
you
it.
that was a bad decision. You asked me what should I pack to Ukraine. I told you bring a suitcase that's half empty because we're gonna go shopping. You didn't do that. Therefore, we're gonna buy a
I
suitcase
didn't
tomorrow.
do that, so I'm going to have to acquire a suitcase because of Nastya directed shopping. Now, point number two, then Jimmy and I get in his truck to go to Kharkiv, and Nastya starts buying electric blankets in Kharkiv because there are none available in Kiev, apparently. And so she
It's
starts
true.
calling,
They're sold out in Kyiv. Yes.
she starts calling drugstores in Kharkiv and telling them to put aside electric blankets, and then sending us the addresses of drugstores that we have to go to
I'm
acquire.
an expert shopper.
So we have 6 electric blankets in the back of Jimmy's truck right now, and they are coming back to Kiev. So other than directing shopping, Nastya, what have you been up to?
I've been trying to finish this dispatch from Odessa, which I should have finished like 4 days ago when we actually got back from Odessa, but it's like taking me a very long time because I've been chaperoning you and, organizing all of this. What else? I just I think we should tell people that a few days ago, there was a mass attack on Kyiv, which, according to some people, was like one of the biggest attacks of the entire full-scale invasion. And you, Benjamin Wittes, have slept through it, which is the most Ukrainian response one can have to dozens of ballistic missiles hitting the city where you're sleeping.
So
I just find
did-
that astonishing.
So I did sleep through it, but when I woke up in the morning, so it was like 6 in the morning, and I saw the news about it, and then Jimmy picked me up at 7, and we're driving out of Kyiv, and you can see the smoke rising from one of the apartment buildings that's on fire, and and then we drive, 6 or 7 hours to Kharkiv. We get to Kharkiv, and I mentioned this on the live stream yesterday. We met with a woman who really has played a real role in my education about not so much the war, but life in the war. Kate. She goes by Kate from Kharkiv or Kate in Kharkiv, depending on which platform. And we sat down with her, and the first thing she did is showed us a video that had just crossed her feed of an apartment building on fire in Kharkiv. And so, we left one city where there was an apartment building on fire, and we drove and arrived in another city where there was an apartment building on fire. And by the way, this was not a few hours after I had said and not because of any perspicacity on my part, but because it was obvious that, this was February 2nd, which was the day after Putin had said, or Dmitry Peskov had said that the ceasefire, or the pause on attacks on infrastructure lasted until February 1st. And it was obvious that there was going to be a major set of attacks on February 2nd. And the night of February 2nd, this happened, and February 3rd, you wake up in one city with an apartment building on fire and drive to another city with an apartment building on fire. And so it's a pretty a dramatic, kind of unsubtle, I mean, chest, King Kong thumping chest kind of bullshit. And there's something about, when you see that from the West and you read it in the news, it's disgusting. And when you see it, the same thing, it's disgusting in exactly the same way, but you can see the smoke from an apartment building on fire on one end of a road trip, and on the other end of a road trip, you sit down with somebody, and the first thing that happens is she shows you a video of another apartment building on fire. There's an added layer to the disgustingness, and it's not that, it's not that the information is unavailable to you as a Westerner that there are apartment buildings on fire. It's that life doesn't stick it in your face in quite the same way.
I think the other point is that I remember writing about this at the start of the full-scale invasion when a Russian Grad or Smerch or Yugan rocket, MLRS rocket hits an apartment building. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I remember it being a big deal because it killed a couple of people. And it was on the front page of a bunch of newspapers, the front page of BBC News, etc., etc. Now that's just Tuesday or Wednesday, right. And it's people have become so desensitized to that, and I don't know how to. I've actually when there were strikes in Kyiv, I would normally, or I used to go to every one if there was a big strike and a building got hit or whatever. I don't go anymore. That's because I know that nobody will take that story. If there is a major casualty event, I will go. But it's just like, as a journalist, that people just don't want to read it anymore. And it's also the same story with the cold. I was speaking to one of the editors of the Kyiv Independent the other day, and he was telling me that the audience on the cold stories is just most people are just not reading it. And I've had the conversation with someone else in the British press as well, and they said that the stories about the cold here, just not cutting through. And
can I ask a dumb question? Why do you think that is? Because I think, to me, the fact that I go to a meeting with somebody and that person may not take off a winter coat in the meeting, and that person slept in a environment in which you have to be under many layers in order to stay safe.
Yeah.
I find that very upsetting, and
what you're describing is really not even the worst case scenario, though. Right?
No, I'm just talking about. No, I mean there were people who were dying.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'm not meeting with them.
I mean, I saw someone in the chat reference a lady that died in Kyiv, and she's in mine and Nasty's district, Padil. She lives just down the road from both of us. She
Wait,
died.
really? The old
Yeah,
woman who
she
survived
died.
the Holocaust, or
She died.
that
Yeah,
story?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I know the city says that she died of a heart attack or heart
Yeah,
failure
but
or
that's
whatever. But
bullshit.
and
I
it's
mean,
the other thing is like extreme cold puts extreme pressure on the heart, right? Because it's a
right.
stress event. So it's yeah. But this is the thing. People are literally freezing to death in Ukraine right now.
And
I
just like
mean,
think of
I'm
all the. I was just wanting to say like, I just think of all the moms with babies who
yeah.
like the logistics of taking care of a tiny baby who needs formula, who needs warm liquids, who needs
Right.
to be washed, right? Like all of those things. Like I just can't even imagine how people do it, and it's mind boggling to me that people outside of Ukraine don't give a shit about it. Like it's like I spent the last night at a hotel because there's no water at our place and there hasn't been any water in 48 hours, and I had a
Absolutely.
really shitty day, and it was just really complicated to figure it all out. And I'm in an extremely privileged position where I have a car and a husband and we can drive and pay for a hotel, and I still had a really really terrible experience. I can't even imagine people who like just put their baby in freezing water if they even have water to wash them and then put them in a
Yeah.
freezing room to sleep. And I don't know how you can not care. Like it's mind-boggling to me.
So I don't think it's that people don't care in the sense that if you say, "Isn't it horrible?" they're not going to say, "Oh, I don't care." I think I think it's more that in the attention economy where they we have a limited number of things that we're able to spend emotional energy on, and there are all these things that are competing for our emotional energy. There's, I guess the economists would call it revealed preferences or revealed caring, right? Like there's what you actually spend your energy caring about. It's not that in the abstract you don't care. It's that you care more about Minnesota, right? You care more about something closer to home. You can, and also I do think there's a factor that like anger at the perpetrator here is so useless in the sense that right so you care and you're angry and you but what do you do with that, right? There's no obvious thing to do other than PayPal me some money, which by the way, if you haven't done and you want to do, we will buy more electric blankets with it. We will distribute more batteries with it. And, like it's actually, once you decide that you care, what you can do with that is actually a hard question in a way that it's not such a hard question. If you care that people are cold down the block from you, you can go volunteer in a soup kitchen. You can give money to, you know, any of 20 organizations that are doing stuff for people who are cold in your hometown, right? There's something, there is something paralyzing about it in the sense that, like, it's many, many hundreds of thousands of people, and there's very little that is obvious that you can do. And I do think that reduces in the attention economy, that just pushes people to focus on things where they feel a little bit more powerful.
I understand that because I did like I kind of had a similar attitude towards what was happening in Gaza, where at some point I just I could no longer look at these pictures, like as a mom of a
Right.
toddler. At a point I was like, okay, I understand what's happening. I cannot look at another dead body of a baby. I'm sorry. And I like just stopped kind of following the day-to-day news. And I understand that. But I'm actually more upset at a different portion of the population, which is the journalists and the editors who are choosing that this is not newsworthy. And last week I went and counted how many articles every major publication has done about this. The Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the FT, all of them, the Kiev Independent. And there were there were publications where they had not written a single thing about it, and there were publications where they've written one thing about it. Even though I think that it's a very John is like, what, Washington Post? Good point, John.
As a 10-year veteran of the Washington Post, I second John's formulation
Yeah,
of that question.
yeah,
The,
but
the frustrating thing is that the Washington Post has done some really good stuff on Ukraine, and the closing the Ukraine bureau is just incredibly stupid. But part
yeah.
of the problem, I think, with
Hey,
journalism generally is.
Jimmy, can I just say one last thing?
Oh yeah, of course.
Sorry, just one last point is that I actually think that this whole of the story of this cold and the attacks is very rich for content. Like, I think there's a lot that you can do. There is a lot of long reads. There's a lot of, amazing photography that you can do, sort of exploring how people are dealing with it. And so it's not like it's a dry subject. I don't think it's a dry subject at all. I think there's a lot that can be done about it. And for some reason, okay, people may not care because there's too much going on in the world. But for some reason, the journalists whose job is to cover Ukraine, the journalists in Kyiv, are choosing to write one article at best about it. So that's what makes me so mad.
It's just to footstomp Nastia's point here. I want to flag something that happened to Jimmy and me this morning that probably made a bigger impression on me than it did on Jimmy. So we are standing outside of a cafe waiting for it to open, and it is, I think the term was fucking cold.
It was -18.
It was -18, so -2 degrees Fahrenheit or something, right? So it's really cold. And nothing's open yet, and so we are, if you're not moving in that temperature, you get cold really, really fast. And all of a sudden, Jimmy points out to me that I'm using the opportunity to take some pictures, and all of a sudden he points out to me that there is this truck that is a water distribution truck, because a lot of people like Nastia don't have running water right now because of some combination of pumping failures and frozen pipes. And so people are lined up in, -20 degree temperatures to get water, which of course is frozen, from a truck because they don't have running water in their apartments, which are also unheated. I snapped a picture of it. It's actually a remarkable photo. And so when Nastia says, there's a lot of opportunities for pictures, that is really true. And
Like, there are families that are leaving their gas stoves on for the night and then dying from some sort of gas failure and suffocating at night. And these are common stories. It's very dangerous. And so, like, there's really not a shortage of content here.
Jimmy.
Here's the problem, and it's not a unique problem to Ukraine. It's journalism is not an industry that is rolling around in money generally. So the problem is, how do you make this economically sustainable? And I don't have an answer to that. To be honest, I'm lucky. I was relatively independently wealthy before I came to Ukraine. I still work for private clients. Okay, if I was just relying on the money I make from pure journalism, I wouldn't be able to eat. Genuinely, right? I'm serious.
We promise we love our job, everybody in the audience.
It's
we love our job.
But I do this not for the monetary compensation. I've been working on one story now for a year, and what I get paid for that story won't cover the costs of reporting that story, right? And this is part of the problem. There isn't money in telling most of these stories. There just isn't, and that's why they're not told. Because if they were, people would be telling them. But it's how do you square that circle? Do you go to like a public service model journalism, which we have in the UK, the BBC, which is under incredible pressure? But even the BBC feels the need to play down to the lowest, common denominator. And infuriatingly, as a Brit who's really interested in Ukraine, if you go onto BBC Ukrainian, you read some amazing journalism about Ukraine that's never translated into English. It's infuriating, and I don't understand why they do it. But it's again, it's coming back to this question, like how can you get quality coverage of Ukraine into the media when no one is prepared to pay for it? Because I tell you what, the costs of war reporting are not cheap. Like to take Ben, for example, to the front line, it's not cheap, as you're aware.
Thousands of dollars,
because we've had
Yes.
discussions about this, and different people have had different opinions on what services should or should not be provided. But it's not cheap. So if you want to do this stuff, and if you want to produce quality journalism, someone needs to pay for it, and nobody wants to pay for journalism anymore.
And
And
this
that's
Ben and
what-
I had this discussion in relation to Ukrainian media too. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And-
one of the groups of people that Nastya and I have been meeting with over the last couple of weeks is a variety of people in Ukrainian media, talking to them about revenue models and trying to figure out if there are ways we can be helpful, that if there are creative revenue models for translating English language readership into, because subscriptions to anything in the United States cost dramatically more than they do in Ukraine. And so are there ways you could create English language subscriptions that then subsidize Ukrainian operations? I've been thinking about that on behalf of some of the people, in connection with some of the people that we've met with. But look, let me be frank. My number of paid subscribers on Dogshirt Daily is on a steady downward trajectory. Not a fast downward trajectory. I'm not worried about it because that's not how I make my living. But, it's not like there's a rip-roaring growth market for what I do. And that's even subsidizing the Ukraine side of what we're doing here with a whole lot of domestic rule of law discussion, which should be, if anything, that should be the stuff that subsidizes things, right? And so it's actually a real problem, and it's not, and there are these maddening expressions of it, like the lack of coverage of a real humanitarian crisis that's happening here. But Jimmy is absolutely right that there is a structural problem underlying it. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody in which I tried to persuade this person that, that there was power in aggregation of Ukrainian voices functioning in English. And she was very skeptical. And I mean market power. And she was very skeptical, and she may be right to be skeptical. So look, we got to wrap because it is, we try to end on time here, even when the show is hours late. We're not going to be back tomorrow. There is no show tomorrow, people. If you show up at the regular time, there's not going to be a show. If you show up at an irregular time, there's not going to be a show. Just telling you, there's no show. The reason is that Jimmy and I are going to be driving back to Kyiv. That's a 7-hour project, not doing a show from the road. And then when I get back to Kyiv, Nastya needs me to buy a suitcase.
More things.
To get back all the stuff that she's made me buy. And by the way, when I'm done buying a suitcase, we're going to have dinner with the estimable Aiden Stretch. And then we're going to get on a night train to Lviv.
Then we're going to have another dinner with 3 more estimable gentlemen.
We are, but I'm not sure we're naming them.
Okay,
So,
we're not naming them.
Yeah, well, although we are going to work on one of them pretty hard to come on the Lawfare podcast.
Okay.
He will come on.
Yeah,
but we just don't want to name him
But we
at
don't.
the moment.
We don't. We're not. We haven't named very many people who. Nobody who isn't a public figure. So
Well,
like,
one
and-
estimable gentleman is already in your picture frame. We can name him.
yeah. Well, he's agreed to come on the show, but like, so we're and then we're going to get on a night train to Lviv, and we're going to wake up in the morning in Lviv on Friday morning, and we will have a show from Lviv. It'll be called Live from Lviv. It'll be at the normal time on Friday, and that's what's going to happen, folks. We're going to be back, just not tomorrow. Don't panic. It's okay. We're going to be back. It'll be on Friday. I'm going to have dinner now. Jimmy's going to have dinner now. Maybe we're going to deliver an electric blanket to somebody, and then we're going to go to bed. Keep the faith. Subscribe to Ukrainian media. There are a bunch of these organizations, the Ukrainians media, Kiev Independent, have Patreons or supporter projects.
Well, to be honest, just read them.
Yeah.
Not even. I mean.
And also
subscribe
read
is great,
Ukrainska
but
Pravda.
Just read
The
them.
best thing you
Read
can do
them.
is read local news.
Yeah, read local news, read Ukrainian media, listen to what your, high-profile, independently minded Ukrainians have to say. You can go onto Twitter. You can even use Telegram to read what they're saying. Just don't put any sensitive information on there because it's monitored by the FSB. So.
Yeah, I will not go on Telegram, but that's.
You're not Ukrainian.
I'm not Ukrainian, and the idea that all of Ukraine is running on infrastructure that's FSB. I find
Ben, we got a wrap,
But-
remember?
It's a losing argument. Yeah.
We're going to be back. We'll see you then. Keep the faith. Keep smiling. And, if you haven't sent me money yet to buy batteries, just remember that there are a lot of people like Nastya who don't have running water, and we're going to get as many of them batteries as we can.
Jimmy's like, fuck, I have to drive more to deliver more batteries.